The West should be fighting a fundamentalist ideology. Whether they're doing it or not is another story. First of all, I think, well, partly if you're dealing with someone like Osama bin Laden, I know that the fight is military. Apart from that, it shouldn't be. You know, I was very much against the war in Iraq before it happened. Apart from the fact that I had lived in Iran and I knew how disastrous it will be for my country, which it was, because the most extreme elements within this system got into Iraq and they also got to suppress the Iranian people far more. And every time you talk about democracy, they say you are an American stooge. So for us, we pay the price. But I think if the West doesn't understand that what the fundamentalists are afraid of is the culture of democracy, what is it that they object to? Freedom of women, freedom of expression, freedom of minorities, freedom of culture. All of this is what Osama bin Laden is saying, calling the West decadent, the way Stalin used to call West decadent for these issues. So these are your strong points. If you're fighting, you fight with culture, you fight with ideology. If you're fighting people who torture their own people and others, you don't do the same things. So the West, I feel, should be very careful of not becoming cynical of its own values. What threatens the West is partly radical Islam or radicalism, partly the fear of terror. But the most threat to the West is cynicism about its own values and principles. And that, I think, is what threatens the West. Well, because of this polarization, first of all, the same way that people keep talking about what is genuine, authentic Islam, you find this in America nowadays. Who is the authentic American? You know, will the authentic American please stand up? You know, the myth of and it is the most, again, simplified mythology. Like they talk about values. Mr. Huckabee talks a lot about family values and American values. Was American values always values against gays? I mean, that is how this country was founded. We're fighting women's rights and gay rights. Or was American values based on life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? I felt that if you want to use a great American myth, you use the myth that this is a country based on an impossibility. This is a country that came here and said, we'll create something that has not existed, you know. So it is the country of the future, in a sense. And it is a country where, that is why it allows people like me to still come and make the same claims, you know, that I can do something I could never do, you know. And these are American values for me. To reduce it to this disgusting talk that American values are about protecting our children from, you know, gays and lesbians. And I'm sorry I keep saying that, but that keeps coming up to my mind as something so narrow and just disturbing, you know. And by the way, I tell Americans, and I was saying that last night actually at the meeting, if Americans feel that it is beneath their dignity, that waterboarding and censorship in this country hurts their values, why don't they think that this hurts my values as a Persian? Why don't they think, some people on the left, why don't they think that they should support human rights of Iranians or Afghanis or Iraqis right now? How many people on the left are coming out and saying Iraqi women cannot leave home? If they leave home without the veil, they'll be killed. Iraqi minorities are killed. The street where Iraqis had their bookstores has gone up in flames. Why don't they support the Iranian women who are right now asking for 1 million signatures against the repressive laws in Iran, why do they ask President Bush to condemn Saudi Arabia, but they don't come out against Saudi Arabia in the streets? You know, these are the questions that I think the myth of the West. If you guys have those values you talk about, why aren't you concerned about connecting your values to others? Why is it that coming to me, it's my culture to wear the veil, but it is not your culture? Because Harriet Beecher Stowe, when she was fighting, they were telling her that Bible says that a woman's place is at home. Those women in the 19th century were not feted, and they were called blue stockings as a derogatory term. Elizabeth Cady Stanton did not live to see women gain their rights to vote, which was only in 1924. It's not still 100 years, you know. So, I'm sorry, am I going? I mean, you can always edit this. You know? So what I'm saying about these mythologies is depending upon whose mythology you choose. I choose the Declaration of Independence myth. And I think that the wonderful thing about America, people keep saying we have a woman and an African American now running for presidency, which is wonderful. But think that we say that with surprise, which means that it's no surprise to me. Why shouldn't a woman or an African American be the candidate for the greatest democracy in the world? But we have come a long way, but not long enough to begin with. And the second thing is that the best thing about this country is that it can change. It can stretch its laws. So the woman who in 19th century had to stay at home, in 21st century can run for the highest office. So a man that in 19th century would be working in the fields as a slave can now become the president of this country. Martin Luther King's dream was not just a dream, you know. This is the myth that I'm after. That is why sometimes I think Obama is giving us the right message.